Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to another episode of The Package Tourist, hosted by yours truly, the Package Tourist, the magical mystery tour called Life, Matthew DiBiase. Tonight's guest is Dr. Greg Brooking. Greg is a high school social studies teacher in the greater Atlanta suburban area. Greg took his Ph.D. from Georgia State University and has published articles in Georgia Historical Quarterly and the Journal of the American Revolution. In 2012, Greg contributed an article about the famous American general in the Continental Army in a book titled General Nathanael Greene and the American Revolution in the South. And then last year, Greg published his first book, From Empire to Revolution, Sir James Wright and the Price of Loyalty in Georgia. Tonight, we will be paying tribute to his writing career. Greg, welcome to the show. It's a great honor and privilege to have you here. I'd like to start off by asking you, Greg, let's talk about your first book, From Empire to Revolution. What led you to write about Sir James Wright?
Hey, Matt, thank you. It's great to be here. James Wright was the subject of my dissertation at Georgia State. My master's thesis was about a revolutionary officer from Maryland, and I spent weeks and weeks and weeks in Maryland researching him. And I thought, well, this time for my Ph.D., I'll do something closer to home. And I chose James Wright, who I had learned about while researching my master's thesis. And of course, the best laid plans. Very little of James Wright was in Georgia. I had to go to London, South Carolina, both in Columbia and Charleston, Boston, New York, Philadelphia, just all over the place. And so it didn't quite work out that way. But I did spend a great deal of time with James Wright and feel I know him pretty well by now.
Okay, please tell our listeners, what was Sir James Wright's background and what role did he play in the South Carolina and Georgia colonies?
Well, he was born in 1716 in London, but his father moved to South Carolina, Charleston, in 1725 when he was 9. My best guess, and I think it's correct, is that his father moved to Charleston because he had 5 illegitimate children, and once that was discovered, he figured he better get out of town so that his children. His wife had already died, and it was his mistress that stayed that was still around. But I think he had to get out of town so his kids could have be able to accept his inheritance with no questions asked here over on this side of the ocean. And so his dad moved to Charleston in 1725 to be the Royal Chief Justice of South Carolina. James Wright's grandfather was the Chief Justice of the King's Bench under King James II, and when the Glorious Revolution erupted, if you could say that, James Wright's grandfather, Sir Robert Wright, was arrested and sent to Newgate Prison, where he died just shortly after the revolution had begun in England. And so James Wright, as a young man, had the example of his grandfather's loyalty to the king and the pain that ultimately caused him. And he certainly seemed to have a chip on his shoulder his entire adult life anyway. As a kid, I say kid because he became acting attorney general in South Carolina when he was just 18. The full-time attorney general would go out of town for X number of weeks or months at a time. James Wright served in that capacity for several years, while also holding his own legal practice. He had the most lucrative legal practice in colonial South Carolina history. Before he became governor of Georgia, he was thus an attorney and attorney general. In 1757, South Carolina sent him to London to be their agent to Parliament. The colonial agents in that time were like modern-day lobbyists, if you will. So he just advocated for all things South Carolina with Parliament. And it was during that trip to London that he never expected to come back to America, but the king appointed him. This is King George II. King George appointed him governor of Georgia in 1760, and he would spend essentially the rest of his life in Georgia.
Okay. What was the source of, he had basically a judicial background, legal and judicial background. What was did he have any wealth? I mean, did he have any properties or wealth? And what was the source of the Wright family's wealth? Were they landowners?
Well, when they came to Charleston, his father was also an attorney in London, but when he came over, the father came with at least 500 pounds that we've learned about in a letter from a woman named Hearn, Hyrne, who commented upon their arrival, and she said, he came with servants and 500 pounds and a phaeton and so on and so forth. So he came from wealth. His father and his brothers all owned plantation lands in the Low Country in South Carolina. And he at a young age also joined in that endeavor, which was really kind of the number one endeavor for Southerners at the time, was to be able to purchase land and then populate it with enslaved people, which he did. In South Carolina, I've found no less than 10,000 acres of land that he owned,
wow.
Which is a significant holdings in that time period.
Yeah.
In Georgia, he would ultimately own 11 plantations and about 25,000 acres of land.
Wow.
So he got paid as an attorney through his lands and rice production, which was significant. And then in his various governmental roles, he was also paid, including 1,000 pounds per year as the governor of Georgia.
Okay. Now, when the Stamp Act protests began throughout all the American colonies, was Wright basically an enforcer of the Stamp Act? Where was he during when tensions began to grow? What was he doing? What was his role in all that?
Well, this is an interesting, trivia tidbit. He was the only colonial governor to successfully distribute any stamps. But at the same time, he was opposed to the Stamp Act. He understood colonial grievances regarding the Stamp Act, but he enforced it because that was his job. He did not understand, and he was a true 18th century conservative. He just could not understand the passions of a revolutionary age. And so when the Stamp Act protests would grow physical or violent in any way, and there were certainly tar and featherings and some minor property damage in Georgia, nothing like you would see in Boston or New York, for example. But he was shot at, like his home was shot at during the Stamp Act crisis. So he experienced some tremendous, flack because of his official position, and that is of enforcing the Stamp Act. But he did agree. He just didn't agree with the method of protest.
Okay. Now, when the war broke out in 1775, did Sir James Wright remain in Georgia or South Carolina, or what happened to him? And later on, when the British seized Charleston and Savannah, did Wright aid the British in controlling the South Carolina or Georgia colonies?
Yeah, good questions. He, in 1775, he was still governor of Georgia. By that time, King George III had given him a baronetcy for his work in Georgia in obtaining millions of acres of land from various Native American tribes through treaties. And he had been there 15 years at that point. He considered himself, and he told the legislature that he considered himself a Georgian and a Brit. And that dual loyalty, put him in good stead for most of his career in Georgia. But by 1775, It was it was a you're with us or you're against us type of climate. And by July of 1775, so we're talking, shortly after Lexington and Concord and shortly after Bunker Hill, he had begun sending reports to England that, that for all intents and purposes, power had been, and this is his quote, my power has been wrested from my hands. The various extra-legal colonial bodies during the Revolutionary War had already begun taking over parts of government. By January of 1776, he was arrested and put on parole in his home, which is called the Governor's House, which is in modern days, well, obviously Savannah, but there's a beautiful museum that's kind of on top of that spot right now called the Telfair Museum.
Yeah.
A month later, he was able to effect his escape onto a British warship, and then he would spend the next 3 years in Britain.
Okay. Now, when the British occupied Charleston and Savannah, did he return to Georgia or did he remain in England?
Good question. During his time in England, he relentlessly advocated for Britain to revise their military strategy and focus more on the southern colonies, which ultimately they did in 1778. And so Georgia was recaptured in 1778 and early 1779. He then was sent back to Georgia to take over the colony and to provide some civilian government rather than military government. And he remained in Georgia from 1779 until the colony was evacuated in 1782.
Okay, so the revolution ended. So I take it then Sir James Wright and his family had to leave Georgia for all time. They never returned? Correct.
His enslaved property at the beginning of the Revolution numbered 525. By the end of the Revolution, it was closer to 400. His enslaved property went to the Caribbean with his eldest son, and then he went back to London, where he was born. And his remaining years, and there was only 3 of them, but his final 3 years, he spent advocating for compensation for American loyalists who had lost everything and because of their decision to remain loyal to the king.
So, if I guess correctly, he died 1786 thereabouts.
Yes.
Okay. Any descendants? Did any of his descendants ever return to America, or they just remained in the British Empire?
Certainly those that were alive when he was alive, his sons and daughters, and he had 3 sons that survived the war, and 3 daughters. They remained outside of the United States, mostly in London, although one in the Caribbean for a bit before he moved back to London as well. His eldest son, also named James Wright, inherited the baronetcy in upon his father's death, but he died in the early 1800s, in the 1800s, and the baronetcy died with it. There's a professional genealogist here in the Atlanta area who helped me a lot with some of his genealogy. He believes that there are Wright descendants alive today, but none carry the name.
Okay, let's change tacks now. Let's talk about when you made that contribution to the book, General Nathanael Greene and the American Revolution in the South. Now, in that book, what aspect of Greene's life and career did you discuss in your personal article on him?
Yeah, this is you mentioned this when we were talking previously. I'm like, oh gosh, that was such a long time ago, and I'm gonna have to go back and look, at everything. But it came back very, very quickly. I was in grad school when I was asked to write a chapter on this book from the University of South Carolina Press, and I wrote about his relationship with his subordinate commanders. I was so intrigued by Washington's relationship with his subordinate commanders, like Henry Knox and Nathanael Greene, for example, and Alexander Hamilton and John Laurens and the like. And so I knew that Washington had carefully groomed Nathanael Greene from early on in the Revolution, and I wanted to see how, if any of that kind of, made its way down to Greene's subordinates in the Southern campaigns in 1780 and 1781.
Okay, I'm kind of curious. Who were Nathanael Greene's key subordinates? Please tell our audience, please.
Well, I guess first and foremost, you'd have to go to General Daniel Morgan.
Yeah.
You'd have to go to a guy by the name of Otho Holland Williams from Maryland. The guy I wrote my master's thesis about, Lieutenant Colonel John Eager Howard, who donated the land for the Washington Monument in Baltimore, and became, in fact, the last vice presidential candidate of the Federalist Party. Guys like John Gunby from Maryland, William Smallwood from Maryland, to a lesser extent, William Moultrie from South Carolina. But these are the guys that would work with him in the Southern campaigns.
Did Francis Marion, the Swamp Fox, have any type of relationship with Nathanael Greene? Was he part of the Continental Army, or was he a total freebooter?
He and Thomas Sumter were mostly at this time certainly working on their own and independently, and sometimes not very coordinated at all with Nathanael Greene, which caused him some level of a headache that he had to deal with in the South.
Okay. Is it accurate to say Nathanael Greene was one founding, if not the founding father, a founding father of guerrilla warfare? Yeah,
I think that's absolutely true. I think he learned that very quickly. He came to the Southern Theater after Horatio Gates' dismal performance at the Battle of Camden. Gates, fled several hundred miles ahead of his retreating army in kind of disgrace. But Benjamin Lincoln had lost Charleston in 1780 in the spring, and in the summer, Gates had lost Camden, South Carolina, which is nearish Columbia, and so the situation in the American South was bleak indeed, and he was going up against Charles Cornwallis, who was a fantastic military commander for the British, and better equipped with a larger force, and Greene knew that there was no way that he could compete, man-to-man, face-to-face against Cornwallis. And so he very early on learned to divide his troops and engage in, rapid warfare on the move, hit-and-run tactics, but not necessarily hit-and-run tactics where we might think of with Native Americans when it is truly, snipe and then run, but like short battles, short, engagements where you're not risking everything, to a loss. You're always able to, I'm going to paraphrase this because it's been a while, but always able to get up and fight another day was kind of his mantra. And so he would often leave the field of battle to the British after they obtained a Pyrrhic victory, one in which they would pay dearly for, and ultimately they got the land, but would themselves leave the field of battle several days afterward, because what good was it going to do them at that point? Okay. The British learned the hard way that to win this war, they were going to have to defeat the opposing armies to the point of absolute surrender. It wasn't going to be enough to capture capitals or anything like that.
Okay, so in a sense, it's a tactic of attrition and prolongation. Would that be accurate then?
Absolutely, that's correct.
Yeah. I'm curious, so he divided his forces, so, because if I remember, Morgan fought Cowpens basically by himself, correct?
Correct.
Okay. And it's true that Greene never, quote-unquote, won a single-pitch battle against the British. He, quote-unquote, lost every single battle, correct?
Correct.
Okay. I'm curious, what caused Nathanael Greene's early death in 1786? What happened?
Well, after the war, the state of Georgia gave him a plantation of a former loyalist outside of Savannah. And this is, as you mentioned before, I'm a high school teacher now. And it's sometimes hard to impress upon 16 and 17-year-olds, gray areas in life. And here we have a Quaker whose belief sets are anti-war and anti-slavery. Yet he became, in my estimation and many others, the best general, field general in the American Army. And then after the war ends, he accepts a rice plantation and enslaves a significant number of people on that rice plantation. And it was during that time that he was out one day and touring his plantations or giving instructions, and he died of heat stroke.
Ouch! Ye gods.
Yep.
Wow.
And so we really kind of, in some ways, it's certainly an unfortunate death in the sense that here's a guy who had all the qualities that seems to be a real national leader. Once the Constitution was written and a stronger federal government was created, that could have been presidential material. It's just one of those, what ifs in history.
Yeah, it's interesting. He died in 1786, the same year Sir James Wright died. Correct?
Correct.
Kind of like a balancing out. Yeah.
Balancing of the scales.
Yeah. Greg, let's talk about yourself now. Where were you born and raised? Where did you go to school? And eventually, where did you go to college?
Okay. I was born and raised in Macon, Georgia, which is about 90 minutes south of Atlanta in the very central part of Georgia. I grew up in Catholic schools, although not Catholic, but I grew up in Catholic schools in Macon and got a great education there. My dad was a big Civil War buff, and every vacation included a battlefield tour somewhere. And he got me hooked on history at an early age. In fact, quite sadly, he passed away Thanksgiving morning, and so it's kind of appropriate that you ask the question about my beginnings today. I went to college, ostensibly I went to college to play soccer, but hurt myself pretty early on and was unable to continue to play, and so I decided that I was going to focus my college days in the classroom, and I decided to major in history, which was really kind of the only subject growing up that I ever really, really liked. And I knew that I was inspired by a high school teacher to become a teacher, and so that's what I did. And I graduated from Mercer University in Macon, Georgia, with a BA in history. And I taught high school for years and years, and decided to get my master's in my mid-30s, and I did that at Georgia College and State University in the former capital of Georgia in Milledgeville. And then immediately from there moved to Atlanta and went to Georgia State to get my Ph.D.
Hey, Greg, I'm kind of curious. Did your father ever trace back his ancestry? I mean, have you ever discovered you had Confederates or anything like that? Because I have Confederates in my ancestry, and I know pretty much where they served and all that. Have you ever done the same for yourself?
I have not. My aunt has, and I have all the information that she's dug up. It's one of those things I keep, and my daughter is really interested in it. And that's, she's in grad school in Denmark right now, but during her summers, we sometimes, get together and try to start tracing back our family lineage. I know he had always said that he had relations in the American Revolution. He's from Tennessee, and so we know that he had ancestors that fought for the Confederates. So I just don't know, personally, I don't know more about my own genealogy compared to the people that I research and write about. So I know less about myself than I know about them.
I got to tell you something, Greg. You know, I know the regiments and all that, and I have stood on the battlefields. I'll tell you, you can pass this along to your daughter. It's very emotional to stand in that spot and try to picture it. You know, I mean, it's humbling in many ways. I mean, you try to imagine the exhilaration and the terror and the anger and the rage, and just also just all the emotions that play in being in war and all that. It's you can pass that along to her, okay? Because I've done that. Yeah. Okay. Next question, Greg. Whenever I interview an author, I always love to ask the standard question: when you were growing up, who were your favorite authors? And of those favorite authors, did any of them light the spark inside you to become a writer, or perhaps influence your writing style?
That's a great question. And it's kind of like a pre-grad school and post-grad school, names come to mind. But I'll tell you that I was always interested in history. So I read, I grew up in the 90s, like in college in the 90s, and, I read some of the classics, on the Civil War, primarily because that was what I was most interested in. But the person that got me interested in pursuing this were two people, a father and son, and they are non-historians. They are fiction writers, Michael Shara and his son Jeff Shara. Michael Shara wrote The Killer Angels, which won the Pulitzer Prize in the 70s, which became the movie Gettysburg. And then his son, kind of because of the movie Gettysburg, decided that he would pick up the mantle and kind of write the prequel and the sequel to Gettysburg, and then he became such a best-selling author. He's written 24 or more books, historical fiction books. But it was the portrayal of character that really just got me. It's like these names of people that were statues, right, and they're just so far in the distant past that they were almost inanimate, and I feel that the Sharas made them animate, for me, made them real and tangible, and that's what I always wanted to then study. I wanted to study people, what made them tick, the things that they endured, their good characteristics and bad characteristics, because we're all human. And so it's not an answer you probably would have expected, but those two fiction writers, just kind of got me into wanting to know more.
Okay. Greg, please tell our listeners, where can readers find your books?
Well, certainly, Amazon, the University of Georgia Press, Barnes & Noble, any books, online bookseller for sure. You'll be able to find, both my book and the book on Nathanael Greene that I contributed a chapter to.
Okay. Do you have a website?
I do. It's Greg Brooking, one word, .net.
Okay.
And that's just got all of my biographical stuff, all of the articles I've written and such, as well as kind of a blog that I keep about my current project, which is a biography of Henry Lawrence from South Carolina, who became president of the Second Continental Congress.
Ooh, okay. So that's your next book project then, correct?
Yes, sir.
Oh, wow. Okay, you anticipate my last question. So any idea when we can expect its release? I feel like Robert Caro now, the famous author of the biography of Lyndon Johnson. Yeah, I have all his volumes. Yeah.
I do. They're great, and he often says that he's writing. He's on volume 5 of a 3-volume biography. But at his age, everybody's asking, when is it coming out? And not everybody's asking me that, but I don't know. It's harder for me because I teach high school full time, and a different breed of teaching compared to the college level where you have more time. My goal is to have it completed no later than 2 years, but it just kind of all depends on how much I can get done each summer.
Okay, now this is Henry Lawrence, the father, right? Not the son who was on President George Washington's staff, correct?
Yeah, correct. It's about the father, but John Lawrence, who's probably made famous by Lin-Manuel Miranda's Hamilton. John Lawrence was his indisputed favorite son.
Yeah.
He nearly broke down like for good when he learned of his son's death, and he was still in England. And so it will invariably feature a great deal about John Lawrence as well.
Okay. Greg, let me know when it comes out. I want you on my show again, okay?
Well, thank you. I certainly will.
Okay. You take care and God bless you, okay?
Okay, take care. Thanks so much.
You're welcome. Okay, bye-bye.
Okay, bye-bye.
Stay tuned, ladies and gentlemen, for next week's show where I'll be interviewing author Isley Rose. Thank you and good night.